So this knife thoughts video is going to be on this knife. This is the Great Eastern Cutlery Northfield number 77 Barlow in African Blackwood. Specifically, it is number 772119, meaning it's the 77 pattern with the spear point blade shape, one blade, made in 2019. And this is the Barlow version, and the Barlow version is only made on the 77 frame, is only made as a special factory order for CollectorKnives, CollectorKnives.net, Mike Latham. And Mike has gotten these knives, these special factory order Barlows made for a long time now. Used to get, a couple a year, but I think GEC has scaled back some, and so it's only usually, I think, going to be one a year or something like that. But Mike calls these the Yankee Barlow, or calls this the Yankee Barlow. So it comes with this cool, top hat pin. And I've had a few of these number 77 Barlows throughout the years, but this is the only one in my collection right now. Mike uses a reserve system on his website. That's how you order these. So a lot of times people try to get these and aren't sure how to go about it. Basically, at CollectorKnives.net, Mike has an early reserve page where he'll announce, and now he's using an app called Telegram to announce when certain knives and patterns go up for early reserve. So check that out. Again, there's information about that on his site. But he uses that Telegram app to let people know when the early reserves go up, and then you reserve a knife through his website. The early reserves for this knife, for this run of 77 Barlows, happened in July, I believe, at a time when I wasn't really buying knives. So I didn't actually get in on the initial reserve, but Mike ended up having a few left over and sent out emails to people who had shown interest on, I think, on his Facebook or something like that, and asked, which cover materials out of Blackwood, African Blackwood, snakewood, and the linen micarta, which was your preference. I went with the Blackwood, although the snakewood was very rare. So I believe they made about 125 of each of the handle materials: African Blackwood, amber, antique amber saw cut bone, and red saw cut bone. Can't remember if I said the linen micarta. And then I think that's it for this run. They made 125 of each of those, but then I think they had leftover snakewood from the number 20 run of number 29 Stockyard Whittlers. And so there were 15 made of those. So I really went back and forth on which I should say was my preference, but Mike did say that snakewood on those didn't have very much character. I've had some knives from GEC with snakewood before. I just don't have any now, and if I was going to have a knife in snakewood, I wanted to have one with lots of character. Plus, I don't have any African Blackwood or ebony right now, so I decided to go with the African Blackwood, and I'm really happy with it. So first off here, I'm going to give you some comparisons to show you the difference between this knife and some other knives you might be familiar with. So the Northfield Barlow is a nice classic shaped jack, sleeveboard jack. It is a Barlow, as always, because it has the elongated bolster that takes up a third of the handle length. And this one is a really nice classic spear point with a cut swedge and a match strike pull. I like that match strike pull. It looks a little different than others that GEC has done, and I wonder if that's because they're using the CNC machine now. I don't know if they use that for that or not, but I do think they use it for the primary grind. And then you can see it has this etch over here. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But really classic Barlow looking knife, and I'll compare it to another Great Eastern Cutlery Barlow. This actually was originally, as some of you have seen, in smooth ivory bone, but I dyed it black. This is the number 15 Barlow. Now, I don't have a number 14 right now. I've had those before, just it's a little small. I just never kept one, but this is the number 15 Barlow. So you can see it's similar in shape. The 77 is, I think, maybe 15 or 25% larger. Not 25%, 15, something like that. But the 77 is just a little bit larger. It's not really more bulbous or more wide like the 78 is, or the upcoming 86 oil-filled jack. So really similar shape, it's just a little bit bigger than the 15. So that's a good comparison there. And then here's another traditional that a lot of people are really familiar with, the Case large trapper. So you can see the 77, you know, not as big as the Case trapper, but, you know, moving towards that. So there's that comparison. And then a few modern knives to compare it to here. The classic Spyderco Endura. Probably gonna be, I don't know if I'll give it away or keep it or what, but I'm planning to get this Spyderco Police 4 lightweight. I actually modified this one to be like that, but anyway, that's a different video. And then we have the Ontario Rat 1, something a lot of people are familiar with. And the Spyderco Native 5, again, something a lot of people, you know, can recognize the size of. So there's a few size comparisons. And I think that this 77 frame is a really great size. The 15 certainly gives a full four finger grip for me, but it's, you know, it's definitely on the medium size, smaller to medium size. It's 3.5 inches closed. And, you know, this could be your main knife, but every now and then it's a little small, and I think that the 77 makes for, you know, definitely this could be your main knife. You get a solid amount of blade, I think about 3 inches of blade, and definitely for sure, you know, I've got wide hands, wide fingers. You can get a full four finger grip on this knife and, you know, really use it. So I do like the shape and size of this knife. It has the classic NF for Northfield stamped bolster, and I believe that these are nickel silver bolsters rather than steel like the previous runs. Now another difference between this and previous runs is the bottom spring pin on previous runs was exposed. Here you can see it is not, it's through the spring. So just a little difference. I don't exactly know why they made that difference. They've done that kind of thing in the past. But everything else is pretty similar to other 77 Barlows. So you can see it has the flush and polished pins, spring pins, and then the somewhat countersunk, not super deep, but somewhat countersunk cover pins. So these hold the covers in. It has a half stop, really nice action, came with really nice action. Now, the edge, like most gradation cutlery edges, this actually was one of the better gradation cutlery edges that I've gotten, thinness wise. So it came with a relatively thin edge, except for one spot, and this is often the case. It's kind of frustrating, but it's one of those things where it's just, you know, I think they've gotten better at their edges, but there's often a wider spot on the edge right around here towards the tip on gradation cutlery knives. So gradation cutlery knives that have a belly, the belly is often wider. And I think what that is these knives are hand sharpened. I mean, I've watched them sharpen a bunch of knives. And I think what that is, you know, they pull it along and then they kind of pull it away from the grinder as they get to the belly there, and so it can make for a wider, a thicker edge up near that belly. So I did sharpen this, you know, kind of brought it down a little bit thinner, and comes to a nice edge. I do think that it's ground well. Like I said, I think they're using the CNC machine on these now, so it seems to be ground nice and thinly, and like I said, looks really good with this match strike pull and cut swedge. I also like the fact that this spear point is not quite as bulbous as on the 78 or the 85 and things like that. It has more of a kind of spear-y looking spear point with the straight spine and edge, and then more of a gradual curve towards the tip there. So I really like the look of this knife. And then one downside is that it does have this etch over here. Now, when I say downside, I really don't care. I mean, I've pretty much decided to keep and use this knife, as you can probably assume from the fact that I sharpened it and everything. But The reason this has this etch is because Gradation Cutlery has instituted a policy of requiring all special factory orders to have an etch that is associable or says the name of the dealer who ordered it. So this is Collector Knives' new logo, and I think it's very understated and minimal in a good way compared to most of the other etches that have been used under this policy so far. So I think Mike did a good job of using this CK etch and putting it on the pile side. So when you show the knife or hold the knife in the normal mark side way, you don't see that. The thing is, I just don't really get why they've instituted that policy. It sounds like Mike Latham would rather not have an etch on his special factory orders, as I assume others would not. And I don't really see how it benefits anyone. If you want to have an etch, certainly a a dealer could ask for that on their special factory order, but I don't see why they should require it. So I actually called and spoke with Joan May, who is the sales representative for Gradation Cutlery now, Joan May Howard, and she basically said, I asked if she knew why they may have that policy, and she basically said no, she doesn't know why. So I emailed Bill directly, but I haven't heard back yet. It's an interesting topic because I really have thought about it a lot, and I can't think of a reason that is very convincing that they would require these, other than to show that whether or not a special factory order has been used and worn down, or to show whether it's been refurbished, because the etch wears off, or maybe to show if something has been rehandled. I'm really not sure. I don't really want to say too much one way or the other about it until I know more about why they did it. But again, on this particular knife, I think that it is well done. The only downside, I think, to this etch that Mike uses is that the K, so this is CK for Collector Knives, the K is actually made from what looks like a modern knife, which is a little bit of a surprise to me, being that, Mike certainly sells modern knives at CollectorKnives.com, or I'm sorry, CollectorKnives.net, but I think that he is more into the traditional knives. He's one of, if not the oldest, Gradation Cutlery dealer. So I'm surprised that he didn't use a traditional knife on that logo. But other than that, I think that it was well done within the policy that GEC has made. The handles on this knife are African Blackwood, like I've said, and the camera is actually showing them really darkly. So this mark side is really dark. It is primarily black, especially if you look at it in the certain light or in the right light. But there is some brown streaks. On the pile side here, I think you can kind of see it on the camera. There's definitely a little bit more brown with a little bit of like chatoyance. So it looks really good, I think, although it's not the darkest African Blackwood I've seen. Certainly, GEC has used other African Blackwood like this, and they've used some ebony that was straight up not black at all. It was, brown. And I think that either way it can look really good, and I am actually really happy with how the covers on this knife look. I think they look, really classic. I don't have as many wood handle knives as bone or other materials, so definitely happy to have, African Blackwood or ebony in my collection. And I think it looks really good. I think it makes for a classy knife, and it fits really well, again, with my 15 that I dyed black. So really happy with it. It's really well made. There might be a slight gap back here, but I think it's more just, some the spring being a little bit low. When I look at it to see if light shines through, it doesn't. So it's not really a gap. It's more of just the spring, kind of how it connects to the liners there. Has really nice action, as you can probably see. I'd say the pull is about a 5, so not too much more than a 6 if it is a 6. but I would say more of a 5. Now, Mike Latham at Collector Knives does have a more scientific scale of rating. He does the actual like pull weight by pounds and stuff like that. So check that out. But it has really nice action to that half stop, really nice action closed. It came well, you know, sitting with the tip well within the frame. The tip wasn't proud or anything, but I did drop the kick just a little bit. Now, this is something I talk about a lot, and people have asked me to make a video on how to do that. I just haven't done that yet. I plan to. But it's interesting. GEC, or actually Bill Howard and Chris Tucker, who used to be the sales manager there, I've mentioned the proud tips to them several times, at least twice, and they have told me that an easy way to fix that is to just, you know, do a couple passes with a file on the kick, or a proud tip, and just an easy way to fix it is to do a couple passes on the kick with a file. So it's something that they've recommended, and it's something that's worked really well for me. So I did do just a tiny little bit on this knife, just to get that tip of the frame, you know, solidly so that you can't catch your finger. The match strike long pull does sit well above the frame, so you know you'll be able to use and sharpen this knife for a long time before the tip, you know, comes up above the frame and you can't reach the long pull. So I think it's a knife that would make a great user. It's not the most inexpensive of single blade GEC knives, but it's not the most expensive either, especially for a special factory order. So it's one that I didn't really expect to get, but I'm happy to get, and I've pretty much decided to put it in my pocket. I came home from a little knee surgery, and this was waiting in the mail, so that was a really nice thing to come home to, and kind of because of that, I think I'm going to keep it as a little bit of a, you know, keepsake from that day or whatever. But again, one that I didn't expect to get, but I'm really happy to get. Really well made, fits in well with my 15 TC Barlow, and a really nicely made knife from Great Asian Cutlery, pretty much as always. So these, as I said, did have to be reserved, and they can be hard to get after, you know, the reserves have closed. But often people get these and want to trade them because they are good trade fodder, or they want to sell them. Sometimes they sell for really expensive, especially on eBay, but sometimes on blade forums, sometimes on Facebook, but generally I suggest blade forums. They will sell for a very fair price. So if it's something you're interested in getting, definitely try to find one, try to trade for one. And I will be doing a full article on this knife here, so don't forget to check out knifethoughts.com. That's where the article will be, and I'll be posting about it on social media, so don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr. I mostly post on Facebook and Instagram at Knife Thoughts. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to my channel here so that you get updates when I post other videos, and hit the bell so that you get notifications when I do upload those videos. Finally, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.